Hi, and welcome to the Quiet Operator podcast. Today, our guest is Paul Smith, who is the owner and operator of Yield Business Brokers. What I'm so excited about is, Paul, you've got both the perspective of people buying and selling a business, plus you yourself are a small business operator. So thanks so much for being here.
No worries, Nathan. Thanks for having me.
And so tell me, Paul, for those that haven't dealt with a business broker before, what is it that your actual role is in a business sale process, and what do you do?
Sure thing. Well, we do quite a lot. But if I was to summarize what we do is we essentially facilitate the sale of a business for a vendor to a buyer, to a purchaser. So we're the middleman, so to speak. We'll negotiate, we advertise, we negotiate, we'll find the buyer and work out or broker a deal between the two parties. Ideally, that ends up with both parties being happy with the outcome, so that the seller will accept the offer and potentially go off into retirement, and then the buyer will come into a business that they're very excited about and grow it, build it, and then one day come back to me when they're ready to sell and ride off into the sunset themselves.
Got it. So often you've got the clients that are coming through to you as a purchaser initially, and then later on they actually come back as a seller.
Yeah, it's as you can understand or appreciate, the length of someone's tenure as a business owner does vary, and they can be 10 years, it could be 20 years, it could be longer. I've been a business broker for 10 years now, and we have had the, I guess, instance where on two occasions our buyer has bought a business and then maybe 5 or 6 years later ended up coming back to us for our support to help them sell the business that they previously acquired through us. It is quite rare, but I guess the experience we want buyers to have in particular is a good one when dealing with us, so that when the time comes for them to exit, they'll consider us an option to support them with their sale. And I think if we can support them and provide good service and ensure that the process is clear, that they understand it, that they're not pressured, that they're guided through, and it's a seamless transition into their new opportunity, then I'd like to think that they'll come back and consider using us again one day. So yeah,
absolutely. I guess it's a testament of how good they found the service when they were there. And you mentioned 10 years that you've been doing it. So how did you get into it, and what were you doing beforehand?
Yeah, sure thing. So I was an ops manager for a travel retail business. So one of the largest, or the largest in the world, and I looked after WA, so Western Australia. I was actually in Perth for a little while, and I was only meant to go there for a couple of weeks to help out, but that turned into a few years, and I guess it was a very senior role. I was managing about 400 people in direct reports, and it was, I don't know, I've always had ambitions to be a business owner, and I've owned a business in the past and thoroughly enjoyed it. And yeah, I wanted to come back to the East Coast, and instead of going back east with the business that I was with, I decided to try to buy a business. And through that process, I had a lot of difficulty finding and learning about these businesses that I was interested in, and there was one that I wanted to acquire, and I made an offer, and I just couldn't get any further information out of the broker. And long story short, the experiences that I had with brokers, business brokers, was quite poor, and I figured I could probably do better. And I saw a very well-known, I guess brand in the real estate industry, and they were creating a business brokerage, and I thought that they had quite a few runs on the board, and saw the advert, reached out to them, and was offered a role and started the journey. So I cut my teeth with a large firm, and I guess I learned how the industry works and how to do things, and certainly how not to do things. And
Sure.
one of those was, I guess, treating clients as if they are a number, a statistic, and an interesting one in business sales is only 1 in 3 businesses that go to market actually sell. So you find a lot of the bigger brokerages, business brokerages, will play a numbers game. So they'll just look for volume of businesses to sell, and not necessarily trying to focus on selling every one. So that's where I felt a bit, I guess, a bit of conflict with where I was, because we were asked to bring in numbers, but when I would see the people on the other side, so these small business owners, and I guess them getting maybe not the best advice that they could, and there's no guarantee that you will sell a business, but I think you should have the support of the broker and someone who actually believes they can sell your business. Someone like that who's representing you in the market, because I think without that, you just become a number, and that's not how I guess wanted to operate. So I ended up going out on my own, and we have the hard conversations with sellers or potential sellers at the start to make sure that expectations are aligned, so that we can give the business every opportunity to sell, because a business owner doesn't want someone like me just being a yes man and telling them what they want to hear, because that's not always going to get an outcome. So
Sure. So really what you're saying is that it's one thing to get a listing, but then it's another thing to actually complete a sale. And by going into business for yourself, you're able to have that flexibility where you could have a very honest conversation with a client, rather than being tied to having maybe a target of listings that in a large portion of time they weren't going to happen. On a listing side, and when you're going through the process, I assume that it's like any sort of role where you're selling a product or a service, there'd be quite a lot of emails and phone calls, but what does a typical day involve, or could it be anything and everything?
It's anything and everything. And I guess the reason why is every business, in my opinion, is likely a reflection of the owner. So you'll have an industry and a particular business in an industry which will be very similar to others in that industry, but every business has the owner's spin on it, so they'll run things their way, which is great. It's one of the great things about being a business owner, is you get to decide how you run your business. We have our processes, so if someone reached out to us and wanted to talk to us about understanding the process and how we go through it with them and look to help them sell, I guess we will typically get an email or a phone call, or sometimes even a text, and we'll respond to that, organise a meeting with the potential seller, and then talk about their business. We'll ask a lot of questions so we can learn as much as we can, because I guess the more we know, the better informed we are, and then the more of an educated opinion we can provide, so that then the potential seller knows exactly what they have and what to expect, time frames, potential price is a big one, very important one. And we go through the process with them. We'll answer any questions that they have, and a potential seller will always have a lot, because they likely haven't sold a business before, and they're coming to us to learn how to do it and potentially for support to do it. So we're there to provide them with that knowledge and support and potentially service.
Sure, yeah, amazing. And I imagine that it'd be quite an emotional decision in many cases for a small business owner that may have effectively grown it like a baby and built it from the ground up, to actually be going through the sale process. Is that anything that delays the process when you're looking to sell, or complicates it at all?
It can. It can, because you're right. The amount of clients that we've had that refer to their business as their baby is more common than not. And I appreciate that. Being a small business owner myself, my brand is important to me, and I want to look after it and make sure that the people who also work with me in my business, I guess, uphold the standards that I have implemented and try to uphold myself. And communication is key, engagement with buyers and sellers, and making sure that you don't overpromise and underdeliver, I think, is important. So back to your question about sellers considering their business to be their child, it's very, very relevant, and it can slow the process, especially if they are making decisions based on emotion, but not on a commercial outcome, which is what they should focus on. But we need to appreciate as their broker that they are going to be emotionally attached to their business, because it's been their life, and it's likely what has fed their family. So we need to appreciate that, and ensure that the buyers also appreciate that, and everyone is on the same wave. But then when we know that we have a strong offer, and for whatever reason, if the seller is still too attached, we'll certainly give that advice. We're not here to make decisions for the seller, but we are here to guide. So we want to guide, and then the seller will direct us in negotiations. But if we think they're making an emotional or rash decision, we'll certainly let them know that before we communicate that with the other side. So.
Sure. It sounds like there's so many moving parts in the whole process, because you've got the buyer, you've got the seller, you've got potentially key people within the actual business itself.
Yep.
So in terms of if someone was to look at selling their business, or if they had the intention to sell over the next 12 months or 24 months, is there a best practice where there's a time in which you should engage, say, with yourself, or do you tell the team potentially beforehand? Is there an order or a process that you follow, or is it more individually judged?
No, absolutely. There certainly is a process. I think the first part of that question, if you're considering selling and you think you will sell in the next, say, 12 to 24 months, it's always good to get in touch with us well before that time. A typical process will take about 9 months to sell a business. So you can imagine that once you start that process, you want to be best prepared. So if you talk to us, say 12 months beforehand, we can have a conversation about what you should work on to prepare the business for sale. And then, we'll have that chat, we'll offer some guidance. The business owner will then go off and potentially operate the business like that to get it to a certain place, or get things tidied up so that your systems and processes are documented, and you have operations manuals and training manuals for staff, depending on what type of business you have. But I guess documenting everything that you can, so that when the buyer comes in, because as a business owner you want to look at it from a buyer's perspective, so a buyer will likely know the type of business that they're looking to buy, but they won't know how the business owner runs that business, because it's how they run it. So if you have everything essentially like a manual, and you can hand that over to someone and they can just read it and then understand how to run the business, that makes the whole transition a lot easier, and it will give the buyer confidence about what it is that they are buying. So and then you mentioned staff. When a seller informs staff is pretty important, especially if they are a big part of the business, and typically they are. So we advise that the seller should not tell staff until you have a signed contract.
Okay.
So once you have a signed contract with a buyer, then you would advise the staff that you are selling for the reasons that you are, and then introduce the buyer to the staff so that they are aware of them, because obviously the buyer will have to offer staff a contract. to work for them. So that's very important because you want to make sure that the staff are happy with who the buyer is, and typically staff will want to stay with the business that's being sold because that's how they pay their bills and their mortgage, and because it's their job. So it's
Well,
quite
they
rare
probably
that.
love it. I'm assuming a large portion of the time they love what they do, so they don't want to
Correct.
spend.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's important that they're confident that while things are changing, not too many things will change. They'll still continue to get their hours, or their role will remain, and they'll continue to be able to work and provide for their families. So there's a lot of people involved, and then you've got solicitors and accountants who get involved, I guess at the pointy end of things, and it's our job as the broker to make sure that all of those people are managed and we're all moving towards the same common goal, which is to transition the ownership of the business from the seller to the purchaser, and everyone works together to ensure that that occurs, and that everyone's happy. I've heard a saying that a good deal is when everybody feels a bit of pain. I completely disagree, because if it's painful, it means either side isn't happy with certain aspects of the deal. And if you're not happy about what you're buying, why would you buy it? And if you're not happy with the outcome of what you are selling, why would you sell it? So, but every business sale is unique because every owner is unique, because we all are individuals and we are unique, and then every buyer is unique because they are their own person or their own company, and they'll run their business that they currently have the way that they think is best. So it's a very interesting space to be in.
Yeah, sure. There's like I said earlier, it sounds like there's so many different things and so many variables to consider. In terms of, again, going back to the process, so it sounds like one of the keys is reach out to yourself if you're looking to sell, or reach out to the business broker well in advance before you plan to do it. Don't start telling the staff, hey, great news, I'm about to retire. Wait till you've got an actual signed contract, and then documenting the process flows. Are there any other, I guess, relatively simple things that you've seen where businesses often neglect to do them, and they're perhaps doing them when it's a little bit too late, that would just be better if they were to prepare in advance, in terms of any sort of process or anything where there's a quick win?
Yeah, sure. I think probably one of the biggest things that we see is, it sounds quite simple, but it's so important, and that's having your financials prepared by your accountant. Now, we should be doing that every year anyway when we do our tax, but if you're considering selling and you are thinking, okay, now is the time, and depending on what time of the year it is, it could be September, and obviously our company tax isn't due until March, but what you should do is get your accountant to get things in order, because the first thing that a buyer wants to look at when they view a business are the financials. So it's so important to ensure that they are prepared, they are clean, and I guess when I talk about clean financials, we look to normalize financials and understand the discretionary spending of a business owner, and if that expense is a real expense of the business, because if it's not, then it might be something like you might have a mobile phone that you've given to your partner and the business pays for it, because sometimes they do work in the business and use that phone. But these are things that we would look to add back, and we would define that as normalized profit, and then we'd use the profit and then a multiple of profit to determine the listing price. So ensuring that your financials are organized and clean, and we can help with that before we go to market. It certainly helps the process, because the more confidence a buyer has about what they see and the information that is prepared, the more likely they are to present an offer that the seller will appreciate and accept, and look to move on to the next thing or next stage of their life. So yeah, it's important that financials are well prepared. And I've seen some doozies where I've asked for financials and I just get Excel spreadsheets and I'm like, what is this? And these are for businesses that are turning over $700,000-800,000 a year, and the owners still rely on Excel to record their expenses and even revenue. It's quite crazy, but having good accounting software and good records and accountant-backed financials, that goes a long way to getting a lot of the preparation done for a business sale.
It's interesting you say that, because as you were saying that, I was thinking about a time recently where me as a mortgage broker, and I've engaged with my direct client who was looking to buy a business, and he asked for a set of financials and was given an Excel spreadsheet with a figure at the bottom. And we said, look, that's great, and we believe that certainly is accurate, but we're trying to go to a bank to borrow so they can actually buy this business. We need a little bit more information. And then they were drip feeding the information through with the financials and trying to present financials that were 2 years old. And I know from the client's perspective, the deal didn't end up going ahead. And one of the reasons for that is that they had a lack of clarity behind the actual figures, and that then started causing them to question other things about the deal.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Wondering, and I'm sure that in your space you would have seen that sort of thing. So really have the good quality financials, but have that prepared, and that's part of your, I assume, your checklist or your process to ensure before you're even going to market.
Absolutely, and that it's raises a really key point. Preparation is key. So when you do decide to sell, working with a broker that will gather all of the information that they'll require to present to potential buyers is so important. We will have a data room that we will use to keep all the data, reports, operations manuals, training manuals, everything. That we will share with buyers at the appropriate time, because we don't just share everything with everyone who inquires. There is a process that we put potential buyers through to make sure that they can and are properly interested in a business and aren't tie kickers, just looking for information. So we'll work through that process with a buyer. But in terms of the seller providing the information that we require to best prepare a business for sale is so important. And when a business owner decides to sell, say with us, they'll sign an agreement with us first, and then once they've done that, we send a information or a questionnaire and a list of reports that we will require, and that will typically take a business owner maybe a week or so to send us all that information back, and then it will take us, I would say, at least 7 to 10 business days to then prepare an information memorandum, prepare the data room, ensure that we have what we've requested, and if we haven't, we go back to the seller and say, hey, we're missing ABC, can you share that please? There'll be some reports, like say BAS reports, that we don't need immediately, but we will need for the process. So we will send a list of requirements and prioritize what is now, and this will come later, because there is a lot, and we do ask for a lot, and it does take time, and it can be overwhelming, but there is no rush. Like these things don't happen overnight. So we're not here to pressure a seller into selling. We want to make sure that they are best prepared, and they are not just prepared with information, but mentally prepared, because you want someone to be confident about the decision that they've made, i.e. selling their business, because if they're not, and you're somewhat on the fence, then we'll probably get half the information we need, and then our job becomes harder. And then when a buyer comes in, if they look at an IM, which will be very well prepared because we do it, we know what we're doing, But then beyond that, when they need further information to then be able to be comfortable enough to present an offer in line with the price that we're seeking, unless they get the information that they require, and that needs to be made available by the seller, if we don't get them that information and get it like that, what happens? They lose confidence, and to your point that you made before about the experience with, a client of yours that was looking to buy a business, they lose confidence, and then they start to think, oh, something's not right here, and everything could be great. It's just that you have someone who's not organized, but has everything, but they haven't given it to us, which makes us look poorly organized. So if we don't have everything that we need, we won't go live. We will wait until our client, our vendor, has provided everything we need so that we can go live and have everything prepared, have everything we believe the buyer will want to see, so that they feel like this is organized, they understand what it is that they are looking to acquire, because typically businesses that sell are hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. So you can imagine, the more money that someone is looking to spend, or we're asking for this business that we're representing, the better we need to be prepared, and the more information we need to provide. And look, buyers will ask us questions that we've never heard before, and that still happens. And again, I've been doing this for a decade, and when we get into the weeds with a buyer about a business that they're looking at, I guarantee on every occasion that there will be a question that will be asked that we don't have the answer for, because we ourselves haven't thought to ask it of our vendor. So then we will ask the vendor, and they will provide the info, and we go back to the buyer. Now that will happen every now and then, but as long as we're getting 99 things prepared and ready out of 100, a buyer will appreciate that. Not every question that they ask, we won't have all that information, because again, each buyer is an individual, and they'll think a certain way, and different things are important to them than what's important to the seller. So so long as we're getting the answers to the questions that they have in a timely manner, and the seller is supportive of that, and is ready to go. They don't have to jump when we say jump, but if we ask a question on behalf of a buyer and our seller comes back to us a week later, not a good look.
Sure.
If it takes a day, that's fine, because people have lives and things are going on. So and again, I guess it's about managing expectations with buyers and sellers and timeframes. But so long as we're keeping the lines of communication open, and if we don't have the answer, we tell them that it's been prepared and it's coming. It might be coming from the accountant, and they may not be able to provide it for another 3 days. Yeah, that's right.
It's about keeping it across there. Now, when you were talking about all the different bits of information that you're dealing with, you've got financial statements coming through, there's all these things prepared for you as your own business. I'm assuming it's not just yourself that's doing this and working 24 hours a day. You'd have some support staff as well?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we certainly do. We have 3 support staff, and they, they're in marketing and admin, and then you've got your bookkeeper, etc. We do work with other brokers as well, so that if I'm at capacity and a business owner comes to us, we never just say thanks, see you later. If we can't help that business owner ourselves, we'll try to find a broker who we know and trust to then refer them to. Now, obviously, if they end up working together, that's great. If they don't, that's everyone's own decision. But with, I guess, being a boutique brokerage, we don't have the capacity of a larger brokerage, because I won't overload myself. I'm not about the numbers. I'm about the results. So we want to make sure that we get an outcome. Now, if I don't think for whatever reason I'm the right guy for the job. I'll tell the potential seller that from the outset, but then try to give them options. I guess a good example is last week I had a lady who owns and runs a hair salon. I've never sold one, and she had very, I guess, detailed questions about the process and about selling her business. Now I'm not an expert, so I wasn't going to act like I was, and I directed her to speak to a broker who is a specialist in that space. That's all they do. They do a great job. You look at their Google reviews, and I think that would talk to that. So I would say to that person, hey, how about you go and speak to so-and-so, and I think you'd be well looked after there, opposed to us, who doesn't have a database of buyers for that type of business, and that's really important. So again, setting that expectation at the start in the very first conversation, whether they are going to work with us or it's telling people that, sorry, we're not the right fit for you. Not to offend anybody. It's actually there to support them and help them, and hopefully allow them to transition out of the business that they have. And it's
get the best outcome. It's
absolutely.
It's interesting when you say that, because I think when the biggest mistake, at least that I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen, when a business first starts, is they actually say yes to everything. They're trying to bring in as much business as possible, but over time, as a mature business occurs, they start getting very clear on who their ideal customer is, and they start niching towards that customer archetype, and anything that doesn't suit them is actually what they say no to. Across there. So for yourself, is there a particular field of businesses? It's obviously not hairdressing salons, but there are some professional services based businesses that you find are better suited to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, in the last 3 years, and you might notice our name, Yield Business Brokers, we've started to target the financial sector, and the majority of the type of business that we now sell or support owners to sell is mortgage brokerages, loan books, financial planning, accounting, bookkeeping, insurance books, those sorts of businesses is where we certainly sit now. And that being said, if a good business comes to us and we think we can help them get a result, we certainly do consider it. We don't just shut the door on everybody. It's we like, I guess, what I really like about my role is no 2 days are the same, because you're dealing with different individuals, different businesses, and sometimes a business owner will be introduced to us, and we'll see their business and think, far out, that's fantastic, that's a great business. And the great thing about being the business owner is I get to decide, and that's, I guess, some of the flexibility I have as a business owner. And case in point, I spoke to a gentleman maybe 2 weeks ago, and he owns a bar in Brisbane, and I like bars, so I'm probably going to help him exit. And we have a client at the moment who has an e-commerce business, and she has a product which is just fantastic. It is nothing else like it, I think, and I think it's got a lot of potential. And I think that's a business that, with the right buyer, it could be scaled, and it could go ballistic and do extremely well. So those are the sorts of, I guess, businesses that we'll always look at. And I get excited about some of the business that I see, and I look at it and think, man, if I would buy that, then I think that's a good yardstick to use. And if I get excited about it, then I think it's good for the sale, because then it's something that I think is great. And then when I'm talking to that with buyers, then I'm not lying to anybody. It's and I think when I'm trying to sell it and I'm pumping up the tires, I genuinely believe it's as good as what I'm saying. So, but if I do not, if I think it's a poorly run business, I may not say that to the potential seller, but I'd give them advice to tell them what buyers look for so that they can get their ducks all lined up and hopefully have a business that, hey, this is great now, and when buyers look at it, they'll see what they want to see, and they'll see potential, and if buyers see potential in a business, they will buy it. They won't pay for it. They'll only pay for a business based on essentially the financial performance and the IP and the assets of the business, but they don't pay for potential, but it'll be highly unlikely that a buyer will buy a business that does not have any. So.
Sure. And when you're dealing with buyers and sellers, and I'm sure that you would have some buyers that may potentially buy multiple businesses from you, particularly in the financial services. So how are you able to juggle the fact that you're working for the seller and your role is there, but then you've got the buyer and their two interests may not necessarily interject at the same particular point, because the seller wants to get as high a price as possible and the buyer wants to get, I guess, in some ways, the lowest price as possible. How do you balance it out when you've got two competing parties?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question, and it's certainly, I guess, one of the most interesting aspects of a business sale. The way I look at a business sale, so that people probably understand it better, is it's like selling a property. So the property, the home, the house is in the open market, and the market will determine the outcome. So the buyer will determine the price. If there's multiple buyers, potential buyers, and there's low supply, so there might only be one business of that sort, but there's multiple buyers, what's going to happen? Economics 101, supply and demand, the price will go up. So if we're helping a seller sell a business that's in high demand, the market will do the work, really, because if there's multiple parties, people have to pay the asking price. So but then if there's less interest in a business, and again, only 1 in 3 businesses sell that do go to market, that you can kind of tell that there's not always going to be competition. So sometimes the seller will have to accept, if they want to sell, they'll have to accept an offer that may not quite meet the number that they want, but it will still be their option to sell or not. Now, if they choose to say, no, I don't want to take a haircut, or offer the business at a discounted rate, which that they believe it would be, then they have the option to say no, and as their broker, we will respect that, and we'll carry on with them and try to help them get a result. Now, I guess if you're 1 or 2 weeks or 4 weeks into a sale campaign, and you get these offers that come in and they're low and nowhere near the asking price, then our advice typically would be, don't say yes. We've just started, but maybe if it was 12 months in and there'd been no interest, that would likely be a different conversation. Mm-hmm. So we just need to look at what is happening, at the interest in the business, and if there's a lot of interest, that's typically going to mean the price will stay or could even go up. If there's next to none, why is there no interest? Is there no demand, or just there's no appetite for that kind of business? And if that's the case, then the seller will have a decision to make. They take a lower offer or they keep going, and we'll obviously try to negotiate the deal and get it to where both parties are happy with, and that's always the goal. But sometimes one side won't be happy, and typically if that's the case, our advice would be, well, if you're not happy, you say no. But it may mean that with a business sale, that could be the only offer that they will get. So yeah, it is crystal ball stuff, and
Sure.
we will always advise our client and buyers based on real results, like what we have helped facilitate, and also what we've seen in the market, because as a broker, we're part of an industry body that has sales data for all business sales through Australia, where the broker has actually entered the results into this database. We don't learn the name of the business or the identity of the seller or the buyer. You just see the type of business and the stats. So we do have access to that information, and that can be very powerful, because we can use that to help set the price at the start, and understand that we know we're in the right area when in terms of asking price, and if we know we are, then we can be confident that that is the price we're going to stand on. And if interest comes in and it doesn't quite get there, we'll always give our honest opinion to our client. And if it's again, if we've only been in the market for a month, we'll probably say, oh, that's no good. Let's wait. Let's carry on. Trust the process. But if it's 12 months down the line, and we haven't seen the kind of offers that we're looking for, but we have got offers, then that's just an honest conversation that we'll have with the seller, and it's always up to them. I will never pressure my client to accept an offer. I would always give them my advice, and I'd give them my honest opinion about what I would do. Sometimes that would be, I would take that offer, but other times it would be like, it's just not good enough. I'd rather keep the business and keep operating. And if you have faith in us and trust us, we'd like to remain your broker and help you find the appropriate buyer, because the buyer pool for a business it's small, it's not large. It's very dissimilar to a property sale, like I mentioned before. Very different. Although there are similarities, and one is we're real estate agents. Yep. You have to be a real estate agent to sell a business or represent the sale.
And I guess probably another one would be when a market is booming in the real estate world, you've got 50 people coming to a home open, and when there's no one that's looking to buy, you might have an auction with one person show up.
Yep.
So like you said, at that particular point, it's about either you hold on to that asset for a bit longer, and if it's a rental property, collect the rental income. So exactly the same. Do you keep running the business, and you decide? And I guess one of the main things would be, it would depend largely on what the person plans to do, and for the sale, can they hang around for another 12 months? So it just sounds like there's so many parts that you need to be keeping track of.
Yes.
It's quite complicated, because on the surface it sounds like a relatively simple thing. Put a business up for sale, someone wants to buy it, and it's done. But it doesn't sound like it works.
Not at all.
So when we talk about the fact that, and you've mentioned a couple of times, that really only 1 in 3 deals go all the way through. So 1 in 3 listed businesses result in a sale. And monetary sounds like it's one of the components, but are there some non-monetary things you've seen that have really blown up a deal, that looked like it was all fine, the buyer was happy, the seller was happy, the price had been agreed upon, but then there's just trivial things at the 11th hour, or perhaps slightly before the 11th hour?
Excuse me. There's plenty of examples. We spoke about it before. Emotion can come into it. I guess an interesting one as well, with certain types of businesses, you'll have a landlord, and like could be a mechanic shop, or a pizza shop, or a convenience store, a car wash, a petrol station, all sorts of things. You've got a third party that will have a say in the outcome. So with a landlord, or an offer will be subject to the assignment of a lease from the current vendor to the to the buyer. Now, when a landlord looks at that, they need to be sure that the incoming owner has the appropriate skills and financial position and experience to be able to run the business that they are buying. And if they do not, then the landlord can block the sale. So that's happened in the past. When you've got, say, franchises, then you've got the master franchise that could block the sale. In the mortgage industry, you've got aggregators that could block the sale because and that has happened on a number of occasions where the aggregator has looked at the buyer and said they don't align with our values, or there could be something wrong. They may do a police check and find something, as an example, and decide that potential buyer isn't appropriate for their organisation, and that can stop the sale. And then there could be negotiations between the buyer and seller, and we will, as the broker, we will try to ensure that we get a term sheet that captures the deal and the structure and as much of what will go into the formal contract as we can, so that they are as closely aligned as possible. But sometimes there will be things that when a solicitor comes in and they review the contract, they'll say, hey, we need to add this or add that, and that happens on both sides. So then you've got potentially warring solicitors that could blow up a deal. So, and we're again in there to try to make sure that everyone stays on the same page. And if you've got a good solicitor, which is so important to the sale of a business, and that will certainly help. And we know and trust quite a few that have worked with our clients and with our buyers in the past. So we'll always refer those solicitors to our buyers and to sellers, so that we know that the people who are supporting the sale are process driven, are here to get the right outcome for everybody, and don't get emotional about things. It's a commercial transaction, so that's what we want to focus on and remove the emotion. But we're all human, and things upset us. And when we get upset, we need to understand. As the broker, we want to understand why people are upset and how we can rectify that. And if it means negotiating a term or condition, then that's what we do. So. There's many things.
It sounds like you're wearing a lot of different hats in your role.
Social worker, business broker, all sorts of things. But it's a part of the job, and it can be fun, but it's stressful as well. And I appreciate that a business owner who's looking to sell, that decision is a massive decision. It's massive. They've, again, as we said before, it's their baby. They've the blood, the sweat, the tears. Like, I fully appreciate that because I'm in the same position myself. And you put all this effort in, and you do it for reward, and you do it so that you can live a life that you want to live. And when it comes to the point where someone has decided to let that go, it's not straightforward. And I get it, and we're on a percentage as an agent. We get a percentage of the sale, so we're but a fraction of what the seller will get. So we're riding that wave as well, but our wave is down here, and the seller's wave is like right up there because it's just such a bigger outcome for them. So we appreciate that as well, and we make sure that we are there, and we're available. I can't always answer the phone when someone calls me the first time, but we'll always get back to people. We never ignore people. It's always making sure that there's communication, and then when you are in the process, it's really important that us as the broker, we are communicating, and we're letting our clients know where things are at, even if there's nothing going on. It might just be a text and say, hey, Nathan, no inquiries this week, no interest, nothing's changed from last week. But I guess you, as a seller, when you hear from us a lot, that's typically a good thing, because we're talking about potential buyers and meeting requests, and depending on the type of business, you might have a walkthrough with the buyer. And we'll come in maybe after business hours if there's staff that would be there. So we'll come in once the business is closed, or we come in as customers and we do a mystery shop, and or we can act like a real estate agent, and we're looking at the property to
Sure.
whatever it is. We'll make up a story so that we can get the buyer through without letting the cat out of the bag with the staff. Because you don't want staff going, oh, who are they? What's going on? If
Yep.
staff wonder what the heck is happening, and they're losing confidence about the business where they work, what are they going to do? They're going to start thinking, oh, something's not right here. I might need to look for another job, because people will think of the worst.
And particularly if they're people where they're going to potentially be part of a sale, that you're selling an operating business complete with staff, the last thing you want is your key people thinking there's something I haven't been told, I better go get a new role somewhere else.
100%.
It could have a real impact on that. In terms of when we're talking about a good business versus a bad business, and I know you don't use those phrases, but is there a couple of metrics that you look at in terms of when someone gives you the overview of a business and you can straight away go, okay, this is something that's good. What would be the first couple of things that would give you that indication?
Yeah, sure. I think people some people think they may have a business when in fact it's more like a job that they have, because the business may not be making much money at all, but it's making enough to pay them a wage. So it's but we'll have that conversation with people before we start. We're not just going to say, yeah,
Sorry to
sure.
interrupt, but talk to me a little bit more about that. So for example, someone comes to you and they've got what they feel is a business. It's either operating as a sole trader or a proprietary limited, and let's say that it's allowing them to pull a wage of $120,000 a year. But they're working full-time hours within the actual business. So would that be generally seen as a business, or is that almost an employee who's working for himself?
The latter. And I guess people will, and like I've been there myself as a business owner. That's how it was for me, especially into the start of my journey as a business broker. Different now, but early on, I was literally trying to make money just to keep the lights on, and it was tough. Starting a business is tough. So, and I guess unfortunately some people don't ever get past that, so they haven't spent time working on the business as they're always working in the business. And I guess if you took that,
sorry, that's phase one then, is
yeah,
earning a livable income, but so that's not really sellable at that point unless there's some sort of a recurring revenue, or there's a client base, or something
correct,
transferable. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's if the business is transactional, so there is no recurring revenue that is being built by the work that the owner is doing, then that makes it quite hard. And I guess, what could I use an example? Say
Someone
a cafe,
selling newspapers, I guess, or a cafe.
a cafe, right? Yeah. So, and we see this quite a bit actually. It's you've got a cafe owner who's up at 5 a.m. every day, and they're working at the cafe till 4, and they're opening, they're making the coffees, they're prepping the food, they're doing everything, they're cleaning at the end of the day, they're closing up, they go home, and they do that, and they're working 60, 70 hours a week. They might say, I'm making $3,000 a week, so I'm making 150 grand a year, or thereabouts. And they may think that they've got a business that's making 150 grand a year, but you take the owner out and the thing collapses. So while you have a physical location, premises for this business, and you might have the brand name, and you turn the lights on, you open the doors, and people walk in, when you pull the owner out, the business will fall over. Now that would happen likely in my business as well, but when you have when you have the earnings, say, that would be essentially a full-time wage for the owner, and you take the owner out and there's no one there to earn that money, then the business isn't generating any profit. So what do you sell? So it's
So on that same example again, if that business, if it would cost, say, $180,000 to have one or two staff members, because it almost sounds like that owner operator is really doing the work of two people. It would be very hard to find one person that's going to open, close, do all the purchasing at the market, sweep the floors, etc., and do the 70 hours. You probably need two people, and often that person's going to be hyper focused when they're doing it. They may have been doing it for 10, 15 years, so everything is just quicker. So if you needed two people and it was going to cost 180, then that's actually a business that's effectively losing money.
going backwards. Yeah.
But then if we were to take that same example and say now it's making $500,000 a year, so then the equation would really be, am I right in saying that it would be effectively the wages it would cost to put people in as operators?
Yes.
And then you would look at what's left over, which
Correct.
180 from 500, there'd be about 320, and then it would be a multiple of the 320.
Exactly.
Based on things.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And then I guess if you spoke about, say, the cafe where the owner's doing the 70 hours and it's only making 180 grand a year, but that's essentially the wage that the owner takes. If you replace the owner, and this is how buyers will perceive the business, you'll need to replace the owner with staff, and then you do that, and then you subtract the wages that you pay from that $180,000 profit. Then that is that gap. What is left is your profit, and then that is what is multiplied to get your listing price. So it's interesting because a lot of businesses that are out there are like that, and unfortunately the only way that can be changed is by the business owner changing how they operate the business and maybe letting go a bit and bringing people in, staff in to take away some of the work that they're doing, but that means they make less money.
Let's talk about that for a second, because it sounds counterintuitive what you're saying. But so if I'm a business owner and I know that I can get away with having minimal staff hours, do everything myself. Now that looks good in terms of what I'm taking home every single year, but when it comes to the actual sales side of things, I'm effectively shooting myself in the foot by not having it spread. So, what would you generally recommend if that business owner were to come to you today saying, I'm looking to sell in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yep. Yeah, I think we would provide, I guess, a few scenarios about different outcomes following different actions that they may take. So, and then it's always going to be for them to decide, when they sell and if we get them an offer, what they accept. But I guess if they go away and work on a few things that we've suggested or we discuss and agree that would be the best path forward to get the best outcome, and that might be employing a staff member to take some of that pressure off and allowing that business owner to then spend time getting the business prepared for sale. And we see this is quite common as well. We see vendors or business owners not have any process documented because everything's in their head. And I was the same for years, because it was me. It was my business and I ran it how I wanted to, and I didn't need to put anything down on paper because I never needed anyone else to see it because, it was fine. But as you get bigger, there is a need for that, and especially if you're looking to sell, buyers want the IP of the business, but if all the IP is in the owner's head, then it's not really worth anything. So if I guess as a business owner, you can get a business coach, you can get a mentor, and and we do see that where the business coach will come in and they'll provide strategy and change, suggested change, and they may bring in staff so they get freed up, and if they get freed up, what's the next most important thing? Well, creating more business, generating more business. So how do we do that? We do some marketing, or the business owner themselves might start networking to acquire more clients. So that could be the path that a seller would take, and that's probably what I would suggest.
Sure.
Otherwise.
Yeah, so I was saying, because it doesn't sound like many buyers are wanting to come into a role where they're going to have to be actively there as the owner operator.
Yeah.
So the key is to be able to present it in such a way that someone can step in as a passive investor with a limited understanding, as long as they've got some level of understanding, but that you can show that a business is operating, because other than that, you're just simply buying a job.
Yep, correct. 60, 70 hours a week, and yeah, you might make $150,000, $180,000 a year, but boy, you're going to work for it. And buyers aren't attracted to that. So well, I guess depending on the industry, a lot of buyers know that what they are buying, they're going to have to work in the business, and they're going to have to invest time and resources and money for wages, whatever it may be. Like, buyers get that, but the better set up it is, and the less reliant on the business owner that the business is, the more likely you are to get a much better outcome. So while you're running the business and operating it, it's going to mean you're not going to make as many dollars, you're not going to put as many dollars in your pocket, but what's the goal? Is it to, and I guess that will depend on the life cycle of the business. If you're in the infancy, then go hard, work 60 hours, really go for it and try to make bank so that you set yourself up financially. But when you're thinking about, I am going to sell this one day, the sooner you start thinking about your exit, the better. So if you're thinking about that 5 years before the age that you'll reach, which you've decided that will be your retirement, the sooner you do that, the better. So then you just get better prepared. And again, when you're selling a business, preparation is everything. So if you are prepared and you get off the tools, or the business isn't as reliant on you as it has been, all that will bode well for the sale. But no business is perfect.
Sure.
And every business is going to need some engagement from the owner, and my business is certainly that way. But I'm
Sounds
not.
like you're very, very active in your business.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah.
That's a huge part of it. So I'm assuming that at the moment, if you wanted to take 3 weeks off and just hope everything would run fine, the wheels would fall off pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think if I just took 3 weeks off, it would. But if you plan and prepare, I think I think it's okay. We've actually got a holiday, a family holiday coming up, where we'll go to Japan for 3 weeks in October. So we'll be well prepared for that. And I've got great people that work with me, so I'm confident we'll be fine. And there's only a 1 hour time difference between us and Japan, so I'll probably still be working when we're there, but that's okay.
So
Change
that'll
of
be great.
scenery.
You'll be checking out some of the best scenery, having amazing food, and still helping sell businesses.
That'll be the plan.
And what else is having your own business being able to afford you, as far as if you've been able to spend more time with the family or have more flexibility? I mean, October holiday is pretty nice.
Yeah. No, very excited about that. Yeah, it has. Being a business owner, for me, has been very rewarding. As I said, I've been doing this for 10 years. My daughter turned 5 years old just last week.
Wow.
So that was a big milestone and very exciting times. And what's been great for me is being a business owner and the type of business that I'm in, I don't have to be in an office location. So I'm currently sitting in the home office. So I've got that flexibility, and the great thing for me is when our daughter was born, I got to work from home and see her all the time and, every day. And I was fortunate to be around for her first words and her first steps, and because my wife would call out to me and I'd run out and see what was going on. But so that's one of the biggest advantages for me. And yeah, it's been great. It's I feel very fortunate and very blessed that I've been to be around, and I think that's for me definitely the biggest thing about being a business owner is that I guess, which is flexibility and the I guess ability to decide where I'll be and how busy I want to be. But typically we're pretty busy anyway, so
that choice sounds like it's made up for you, because I've noticed as well with your business, and particularly with a lot of the businesses you've sold. When we talk about financial services, you tend to often attract those higher ticket, those higher sale prices, so the larger clients. Is that by design? I mean, you've got a mixture, but there's been a lot of 2 million plus sales that you've done across various businesses. Have you become known for that? Did you start that way, or has that been built up over time?
I think we've personally, I think we've earned that opportunity because when I first started as a business broker, we were you made a comment before, when you're starting out, you just want to get revenue and just stay afloat and just say yes to everybody, and I was doing that because I was told that's what we should do. But I quickly learned that that doesn't mean you're going to get everyone the best outcome, and my goal is to try to help my clients get the best outcome. And if I don't think I can do that for them, I'll tell them that at the start, so they don't become my client. So if their expectations are through the roof, or whatever the case may be, we have that conversation. And then so I guess after learning that early on that wasn't happening, I went on my own way and changed the way I would I guess approach a potential seller. Just have honest conversations about what we could achieve. But then I'm ever the optimist, so we certainly push the boundaries and try to get the best outcome that we can. And I think that has then resulted in our client and the larger businesses coming our way, because we've kept getting results. And and as we talk about our results, it gets the attention of other business owners, and they say, oh, this guy did that, and well, mine's a bit bigger, but we'll have a chat to Paul and see what happens. And it just has snowballed in a good way. And now I had a conversation with a gentleman last week, and I've been talking to him for 2 years, and we'll likely start preparing his business for sale, and from the 1st of July, because he has a very clear plan. And we spoke quite a while ago, and we spoke about where we'd need to be to get a certain number to exit, and and that listing will likely be around the $5 million mark. So I've worked with him for 2 years. So it's like we're already on this journey together, even though my role as an agent hasn't started. Him working with us and getting things aligned with what the market and what our buyers look for has been key. And I'm very confident that when we go to market, people are going to really like what they see in terms of what this business is and what's for sale. And that'll, I think, result in a much better outcome for him than what it would have been if we had have just gone to market 2 years ago. But he wouldn't have done that anyway, because he wouldn't have got anywhere near the number that he wanted to retire. So we're on the journey with him, and we're getting to the pointy end now, so it's exciting. But that will certainly be one of the larger opportunities we've presented, and and I think you're right. We have had a number that are around that 2 mil mark, and some, and we are transacting those. So because we are transacting them, more sellers like that come to us, and because it proves that we have a database of buyers who acquire these at that number. And like I talk about the hairdresser again, I wouldn't have anyone to buy her business on my database, so it's a feather I don't have in my cap, and it's a really important one. So it's been good. We're certainly on the up, but we don't discriminate. We've got a mortgage loan book that we've listed, and it's $100,000, and that client wants an exit. We believe we can help them get that exit. So we're willing to put in the effort with them, and it's quite interesting. A sale of that size would probably do even more work for that than what we would for a $2 million listing. So well, maybe not as much work, but certainly have more conversations, because there's more of a market for that, because of the price. It's just a lot more accessible for people. It's a lot easier to find $100,000 than it is to find $2 million. That is for sure.
Strangely, a $2 million buyer and a $100,000 buyer will often be completely different people. It's not going to be the $2 million buyer is probably not going to bother with the $100,000. So you might be getting someone that's out of the industry for $100,000, whereas $2 million, it will usually be a larger, I'm assuming, operator in most cases, or a very experienced person. But it's interesting in terms of some of the businesses, because you've sold so many different. What's maybe one of the most surprising, either business you've sold or the strangest transaction that you've been a part of?
Probably the most surprising business that I have sold was they made pallets, wooden pallets, and by crikey, this business was so profitable. Like, we're talking 1.5 mil. I just when I went to the business, I was very surprised, and but it was on a massive lot, 2 warehouses. They had, pallets, which is their stock, stacked up for, it seemed like kilometers, but it wasn't. But there was a lot of pallets, and, I asked my client, the owner, how did you start this? Because they started it from scratch, and he said he used to own a restaurant, and he was sitting in the restaurant, and they were sick of the industry, and it's a tough industry. It really is. Running a restaurant is hard, and the appetite for, like, the buyer appetite for restaurants isn't very high, so they're hard to sell. But this client of mine, him and his wife, they ended up selling their restaurant, and I think she was a sales rep for one of the telcos, and he was deciding on what they were going to do next, and he was just sitting down having a coffee in front of his restaurant, and, like, watching the world go by, and all these trucks were driving by, and he goes, what's something that's consistent? What do we always see? What's used every day? And he kept seeing trucks, and he goes, oh, there's pallets on trucks. What pallets? So he started making pallets with a hammer and some wood. He did it all by hand, and he spent like weeks and weeks making stacks of pallets himself, just cutting them and nailing them together. And then his wife went out, and they got a contract with a large business, like, quite soon in their journey, and it just blew up. And they were the area where they were in Sydney. They own so much land that they were uber successful from this business. It was really cool story. And then we got them a fantastic result. It was it's actually one of the highest outcomes or prices that we've achieved for any client, and that was pretty cool. That was and I wasn't the only broker on that. There was a couple of us, because it was a large deal, and we worked together and got a great outcome, and everyone was happy. And it's great to see that that business is still thriving today. And that sold, I think, about 8 years ago. So it's that was a surprise, but it was a great story behind it, and great outcome for all involved, which is what we seek.
Yeah, pallets. You see them everywhere. You go to a supermarket, you see them on a truck, and so
Yep.
no, it's definitely an interesting one. In terms, just to sort of wrap it up, and thank you so much for how generous you've been with your wisdom and your time. Just a couple more questions in terms of someone listening to this, if they're thinking about potentially buying or selling a business. What's probably one or two things that you'd want them to think about beforehand?
Yeah, sure. I think from the seller side, just reach out if you're thinking about your exit, irrespective of when it will be. Reach out to a broker. I think you should, for a seller, if you start that conversation sooner rather than later. If you speak to the right broker, then I think you'll be best prepared for sale, which should mean higher potential for a good outcome, a better outcome. But when you do your research, you want to look at the business that you own and then find a broker that specializes in that industry, because they will have a database of buyers that potentially will produce your buyer. Don't just go to anyone, do some research yourself. So research the broker, because you don't want to go to someone who claims to be a specialist, but then you turn around and you have a look at half of their listings and they're completely unrelated to the industry they're claiming to be a specialist, and that's not what a specialist does. So if you find a specialist broker, that's great. If you can't find a specialist broker, just do some research online and look at brokers who are selling similar businesses or have a number of businesses that are similar to yours. And then start that conversation. From a buyer, I would suggest getting your finances ready. Make sure that you're looking at something that you can afford, because if you can't afford it, it doesn't matter how great you think you are. If the banks or lenders won't give you the funds to acquire the business, you're never going to be the owner. So you're just wasting your time. You're wasting my time. You're wasting my client's time. So don't do that. So make sure that you understand, and I guess have a clear goal, and you understand what it is you're looking for, and make sure that you can afford it. Because if you can't, it's just I guess pipe dreams are just that. The dreams, and we do talk to a lot of people that have these dreams, and I get it, because I used to be the same. I remember when I first started looking to buy a business, I was like, I'll buy something for $1 million. But there was no way I could get $1 million together to buy a business. So that changed my tact, and I learnt that by going through that process, and it was a bit embarrassing. But it was a good learning. So I knew what
champagne taste on a beer budget, I think they call it.
yeah, spot on. I like beer. So, but then I started looking at beers, not champagne, and but then for the life of me, I couldn't get the information I required. So I ended up on the journey that I am currently on, and pretty happy that I did. So.
All right, and just one more sort of pick your brain question. But if someone had, say, 200,000 to 500,000 of funds that they could put into a business, what's maybe one or two industries that, in your opinion, would be worth having a look at?
Yeah, sure. I think, well, there's some popular ones, and the last time I checked, so don't fact check me on this, but the last time I checked, the most searched business for sale here in Australia are car washes.
Okay.
So and they can be really quite profitable. So and they can be also set up so that you as the business owner don't need to be there. So that would be something I would look at. I think it would even interest me myself. Um, Cafes are always popular, bars are always popular, mortgage brokerages are always popular, but you need to ensure that you have the skill set to complement the industry that you're looking at. So if you don't, that could be a barrier because of the landlord, because of the aggregator in the mortgage industry. So you want to make sure that while you may have those funds ready to deploy, you actually have the knowledge and the skill set to run the business, unless the business comes with those people that you can rely on to learn from, because as the business owner, you might be called in one day to actually do something, even if you don't work in that business day to day. And, if there's no one else there, and you're the business owner, guess what? You're going to have to step up. So, you got to, I guess you just got to make sure that, you know what you're doing.
Sure. Excellent. Well, look, on that note, Paul, thank you so much for your time today. Paul from Yield Business Brokers, very much appreciate you coming on.
Not a problem, Nathan. Great to be here. Appreciate your time and for having me on.